All right, I'll go ahead and get started. I was just waiting a few moments as folks were continuing to join. Thank you all for being here today. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon from wherever you're joining me from today. This is the Blockchain Ask Me Anything. So I am looking forward to seeing your questions start to come in and getting rolling here. I do hope everyone is doing well and staying safe out there wherever you're joining me from. I'll just do a quick introduction and I'll try to touch on specifically a little bit about my background with blockchain. Some of you might have seen some of my talks or streams or workshops before. Maybe you were here last week. So this little session is a little, different, I would say, from perhaps what we've done in the past. This is just a straight, like, ask me anything you would like related to blockchain, preferably. And we can kind of just talk about it, or I can do my best to answer your questions. I might also post some questions to you all to go ahead and answer in the chat. But just a little bit about me, I am a part of the Microsoft Reactor team. I am a technical program manager. And really what I do is focus on creating and deliver learning experiences centered around emerging technology. That is the role that I focus on. It is really exciting because I have a lot of flexibility to kind of choose the topics that I am interested in personally. For me, that has very much been blockchain. I've been on the team for just about exactly a year now. So blockchain has been really important to me. I'll share some of the stuff that I've created and hopefully that can help you. But that's been one of my top topics that I've kind of learned and delved into and met with and worked with folks, as well as kind of now focusing on Rest and Go. I think you can see the point here, but I originally got into blockchain because I really heard about cryptocurrency, right? I think that was a big thing that stuck out in my mind that I really wanted to learn and explore a little bit about. So I really kind of started there, dabbling with that. And then that kind of, opened up my eyes to lots of other opportunities or opportunities kind of about blockchain development. And I started exploring that, have really kind of focused on Ethereum blockchain development. There are other platforms that you can develop on. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff and information out there. So it's been really exciting for me to learn, to connect with others in the industry, both inside and outside of Microsoft. And then go back and kind of talk about what I've learned and show. So that's been super exciting to me. I'm a little bit of a long-winded introduction, but just wanted to provide a little bit of background there. I'd be happy to hear from y'all kind of about like how you got into blockchain and just what you're excited about right now at the moment, what else you're looking to learn. And I'm pretty much just going to open it up to questions. So I think let me go ahead and start with any questions that are actually coming in from the audience. And then I just have a set of prepared questions as well that I want to go through. There might be some things that I want to share or do quick demos of. But yeah, feel free to keep them coming. So the first one is Microsoft has embraced Quorum and Ethereum-based technologies. Is there a specific reason for this? Does Microsoft have any thoughts on Corda, Hyperledger, Fabric, etc.? So yeah, I think that is a great question to get started with. And actually, the first area that I was thinking about exploring was actually kind of like Microsoft specific questions. I think that is fantastic. Yes, like you're mentioning, we have really kind of embraced the Quorum ledger and Ethereum-based technologies. Even our blockchain development kit, for example, like really focuses on Ethereum development. I think we've also partnered with other folks like Infura. So Infura is a really nice solution that can help you easily deploy to Ethereum network. So, various public test main nets. So I think that was kind of the partnership that we had started to explore first and we found to be really fruitful. Do we have any thoughts on Corda, Hyperledger, etc.? I think I won't say that we have like any strong thoughts either way. I think that those are all great platforms. I'm happy to talk a little bit more about those. I think as far as Hyperledger in particular, that is something that we have, explored and then kind of dived into a little bit more. You can actually use the Blockchain Development Kit extension, for example, to deploy to different, I think just Hyperledger best you actually, whereas like there are still a lot of other Hyperledger kind of solutions out there. That's just kind of where we've dabbled. I think Corda in particular, that is just another kind of private blockchain network that you can build on top of. I don't particularly know how much we've kind of dabbled into or, thought about exploring with that. I think it might be a good solution, or rather maybe even alternate to like what you can do with Azure Blockchain Service as far as being able to kind of build and manage your own kind of permission consortiums. So maybe just an alternative, but I don't think that there are any specific reasons maybe why we haven't decided to partner with those folks. I think we're always kind of looking for new partnerships and ways to kind of expand our offerings and work with other blockchain companies and blockchain solutions. And let me know if you have any follow-ups as well. The next question that I see here is around what advice would you give to someone who is looking to dive into the blockchain space and eventually become skilled at blockchain development? So that is also an area that I wanted to hit. And let me just actually go forward in my slide deck. So I do have kind of a whole set of Microsoft specific questions that we can come back to. I also do have this whole section centered around blockchain development. So I think, first there are a lot of resources, and I'm kind of jumping to that third question there for learning how to develop, on different blockchains. So first off, I think it's important to note that there are just different solutions out there. So something that I've mentioned that I've spent time exploring has been Ethereum development in particular. I think why I've gone with Ethereum as kind of the platform to focus on for development is that number one, it's just a very popular platform. I think that's what's drawn me to it. And again, kind of coming from a place where I was just, drawn to cryptocurrency at first. I think it was really cool to think about how Ethereum had extended past, just cryptocurrency into actually building this whole platform that you can develop on. It's also open source, like many of the other kind of platforms on that you can develop on, for example, like Hyperledger or like Corda. Those are also great options. So let me start to share a few different resources kind of as I'm talking, which I think can be helpful too. So I have some links. And I think, advice, I would think about first, like what kind of development are you actually interested in, right? Just like, any kind of software or hardware development that you might do, for example, maybe just software, you're thinking about like, well, what area do I want to actually focus on, for example? Like, do I want to focus on the front end? Do I want to really kind of get into the back end development? Do I want to be full stack? Do I want to kind of have an emphasis on security? So I think it's also important to think about, what's important for you there. But if you're maybe like me and just kind of wanting to explore everything, like I would consider myself to be most similar to a full stack developer who kind of is interested in the whole spectrum of development that you can do. That might be a good place to start, just to really kind of dabble and kind of get the background up to what you can do just as any kind of blockchain developer. So let me go ahead and switch over to my browser. Oops. Okay, so I think the first place that I would start to explore is Ethereum. I think that they have a lot of great learning resources here. So maybe I want to go to the developers section, and if I go to learn by coding, so let me drop this link in here. This could be a really great place to start. What I like about this kind of experience is that you can really choose your own adventure here. So there are different code sandboxes to start with. So Remix can be a nice kind of IDE to start out coding in. You might want something even before that. ETH.build is a little bit more educational, kind of drag and drop programming. I think that can be a really nice experience. There's also really great videos that the creator of ETH build makes along kind of with this, so you can really learn a lot about Ethereum development as you're going along and kind of following the tutorials. There are also a bunch of interactive game tutorials if that's your thing. I've played around with Crypto Zombies. That can be really fun. I think Crypto Zombies has a lot of lessons to kind of really teach you much about blockchain itself, as well as kind of Ethereum, and it also focuses on Solidity, the kind of programming language that is most supported by Ethereum. There are also developer boot camps. So those are other options. I think Consensus is another cool company. It's a kind of leading Ethereum software development company where they've built lots of different blockchain applications and solutions. So that could be a really cool one. So this is somewhere where you might want to start. A couple other that I mentioned were Corda and Hyperledger. So that's another question that someone had asked. So let me just bring it up. I might have a better link to that. But Corda might be somewhere good to kind of explore, or maybe just taking a step back and talking about Corda. Corda is, I mentioned, kind of it's an open source platform, but it is really for thinking about like permissioned or private blockchain and being able to build solutions from using Corda. So this can be another option as well. I thought I had a more direct link, but we can take a look around here. There's like a training or tutorial section that I'm looking for. But yeah, this is typically like how I've just started exploring. I think Ethereum, like you saw, it's really easy to find information here, but it's pretty easy on all the other sites. I think, yeah, tutorials is maybe what I was looking for. In the docs.corda.net, this can teach you a lot of helpful information here. I see stuff about writing a contract test. There's probably a lot more. There is actual training that they offer. So I think that's another one that you can look into. And then the other one that I mentioned was Hyperledger. And let me see, I think I have a link to that as far as different tutorials that you can explore there. Yeah, so there are a lot of tutorials. This can be a little overwhelming. Like you might not want to come here. You might want to first or maybe you want to look through these different solutions and start to understand like, okay, what is this exactly? What do I want to do? And start to explore them one by one. But I'm kind of sharing these maybe in the order that I would explore them. So I think most likely I would start with Ethereum first. And I'm going to hop back over there for a moment. Something else that I did want to point out, and this is actually kind of leading into a question that I got last week. I've spent a lot of time really kind of focusing on Solidity as the kind of main programming language that you use to do things like build smart contracts and can kind of help you as you're starting to explore actually building out dApps and kind of a user interface around your application. But there are other languages that you can use. And let me find the link for that. I have a lot of links, but they're all over the place. So the one that I'm looking for in particular is this one. So essentially, let's say that you are, already a software developer and you might be familiar with any of these languages. So that is an option that you can just kind of look at how you can use Ethereum for Java or Go or .NET. So there's kind of lots of ways to get started there. So yeah, I would check that out too. I can throw the link for this in there as well. All right, and I appreciate the questions coming in. So let's go ahead and jump into a couple more of those. I'm going to jump around a little bit because there was a question that just came in that caught my eye about kind of just giving a brief intro to what blockchain is. Let me try to do that. And I don't know how brief I can be, but there is something that I want to share that I think can be helpful. And I'm going to look for, oops, go back. So I'm going to look for, there's lots of resources to help you do that. The thing that I am specifically looking for is our Microsoft Learn platform. There is this introduction to blockchain on Azure learning module here that I would encourage you to explore. I also have a video where I'm covering this. And I have a couple other resources that I can share, but I think this is a really great place if you want just kind of a nice introduction where you can read a little bit about what blockchain is. And let's go into one of these modules actually. So I think this is a nice way of kind of explaining it in a nice illustrated in a nice illustrated way. But I think essentially, when you want to think of blockchain, this is just describing it as a record-keeping technology. People also describe it as a distributed ledger. So essentially, what you can think of is maybe this kind of place is the best place to focus on for a minute and kind of to see the actual picture here is perhaps, you are in a situation where you want to work with or conduct business with multiple parties that perhaps you don't know. So I think, traditionally with blockchain ledger technology, the key ideas were about kind of having this, you can think of it as a database, but the whole idea is that it's distributed so everyone really does have a copy. There are constant changes happening, so things might be happening like transactions, for example. And those are all getting captured in the ledger. So from the history of time, we're capturing all of the different transactions and events that have happened on this ledger. So everyone has a copy and everyone's copy is constantly being updated with all these changes. So the really nice thing about that, just at a high level, are that, you can kind of see the transparent history. It's immutable, meaning that no one else can change this history, which is nice. In this situation that you're seeing here, this is kind of a classic supply chain example, and I think that's where we're starting to see a lot of different use cases with blockchain. But for example, in this kind of supply chain, you have all these different parties. You might have a farm and you might have your kind of distributors, your factory, and that's an ice cream store. So each kind of these parties have their own ledger. They all are responsible for different things. They're all working together in this business to kind of move the products along to the final state of getting to this ice cream factory. So that's kind of the short description, but the idea is that you might have all these participants. Typically, they don't know each other, and they're doing business together with the help of this distributed ledger technology. I think, cryptocurrency, again, was kind of the first really big use of blockchain and distributed ledger technology. You can look at something like Bitcoin or Ethereum as a good example of that, of being able to kind of send currency and kind of buy. But yeah, so focus maybe on sending currency to other people. All of that is captured as a transaction in this distributed ledger. And it's nice and immutable. You also kind of have the privacy aspect where you have kind of a digital identity that's not necessarily tied to your own person. So that makes it a nice and secure way. It's also more accessible. For example, if this is a nice way to do business or banking, where like you don't necessarily have access to get to a physical location, that can be another nice advantage. So I didn't share the link to this. You might be able to just search for it. Let me try to share the links a little bit better. But what I just did to search here was Microsoft Learn, the introduction to blockchain. And I also have another link that I can share out to that. I'm also losing my mouse, so just give me a moment to get back to the slides. I'm going to skip ahead for a little bit here, and I did want to point out these resources. So let me get them while I'm here. Can I copy this link? And I am sharing these in the chat. I'm just responding to whoever asked that question. So I'm going to share with you the learning path. I'm also going to share a link to different blockchain videos that I've done. And then this last link here on the page is a talk from Mark Rusinovich, and he is the Azure CTO. And honestly, that's probably the best kind of introduction to blockchain talk that I've seen. It's about an hour, but I would highly, highly recommend it. And I mean, there's also the Block Talk. I can go ahead and share that. Block Talk is a show that was produced by the blockchain team at Microsoft. They're typically short episodes, anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes, kind of explaining a variety of things. That might be a little bit more high level, actually talking about specifically kind of like what different solutions that we provide, Microsoft provide for blockchain, but that's something that you can check out as well. All right, so what else? Let me go and jump back up to another question. And I'm going to go back and kind of focus on the Microsoft specific, because I think that's the question that I'm looking at here. And I'm going to bring up another resource in just a moment. So this question is about what is the main difference between Azure Blockchain Solution and Azure Blockchain Workbench. So I was just kind of bringing it up. If you see this link, and let me just go ahead and drop the link in because I'm dropping all the other links, but this is going to be a good place to go to, as well as there's a doc site that you can go to, and there's really good tutorials in there as well that you can explore to actually get hands-on and use these different solutions. You can get free Azure credit if you don't have that and don't want to pay to use these solutions. But let me sum it up first. So Azure Blockchain Service, this is going to be a really nice way to help you kind of manage your consortium, like your private blockchain network. So typically what's happening with the Azure Blockchain Service at this point, you might already have some kind of solution. So say that you already have some kind of smart contracts or even kind of an application that you've built around your blockchain idea. You have your own network created. So this is going to be a really great place to kind of come in and connect your network to. You can see a lot of really helpful information in Azure Blockchain Service. It might be helpful for me to go there. I don't currently have a service up and running. That might be helpful to actually see. But typically, what you see is something like this when you're in Azure Blockchain Service. I don't know if I can make that any bigger. But you come in, there's this dashboard. You can do a lot of monitoring, so you can see all of your blocks and transactions. You can do different access control events. So since you are working with a permissioned or private blockchain in this case, you can invite different users to kind of come and be part of your network. You can introduce the blockchain data manager, which is really cool. This can be a chance for you to actually capture your ledger data that's coming in, and then you can do things, kind of transform that data in a particular way. So perhaps you can do things like look for certain events that are happening, and that can maybe trigger some kind of action. So like if I bring it back to like the ice cream scenario or something, you might be looking for that like shipment to be delivered to the ice cream store or something. So you can like look for that event and know that you need to do something when that happens, either to say like, okay, yeah, the shipment was delivered. But this can just be a really nice place to manage and get a nice overview of what's happening on your network. That's kind of how I would sum it up. But typically by this point, like you already kind of have your solution pretty much together, and you can just integrate with Azure Blockchain Service. And you can do that really easily with the help of the Blockchain Development Kit. So when you choose to deploy, that is one of the options. So you can, usually want to deploy like locally first, but then you can also choose to deploy to Azure Blockchain Service. And then once you do that deployment, it's constantly kind of just monitoring everything that's happening on your network. In the Azure, oops, not that one. The Azure Blockchain Workbench. So you see a little bit of like a snapshot in there as well, but I think there's a couple key things that you can do here. So you see that you can prototype blockchain apps. So this can be a nice way to kind of create a very simple interface on your for your blockchain solution. So I think this is a quick little video here that you can watch to kind of see how that works that I would recommend, but that is one of the benefits of actually being able to kind of build this prototype or app so you can start to interact with like your smart contracts, for example. You can also do some monitoring here and where you can kind of see the events that are happening, but typically you kind of go here and you're triggering events, right? You're triggering events through this app and kind of seeing the result that happens. So building apps and being able to see the events that are happening is kind of how I would sum that up. The link that I had shared, the second link that I had shared was to the doc site. So the doc site, I would highly recommend coming here and going through some of the tutorials, watching some videos kind of around how you work with these different tools. So I think, let's see, probably these top ones would be really helpful. So either deploy an Azure Blockchain Service Member or deploy an Azure Workbench. Those are going to be really great places to start. And yeah, definitely look up how to get free Azure credit if that is something that's going to be useful. All right, this next question that I see was how did I go from being interested in cryptocurrency to senior PM at Microsoft working in blockchain technologies? Let's see. So, I mean, yeah, I just became interested like in cryptocurrency before I joined Microsoft. So, I mean, I would say that was about 2017, right? When there was like the Bitcoin peak price. And, you know, I think that's, you know, probably when everyone was like, whoa, what's going on at Bitcoin? I mean, there are plenty of people that were interested before, but I think for me, that's really what caught my eye. I kind of had continued to be interested in Bitcoin and rather blockchain technology. I think, you know, after that, I started looking at like, well, like what is blockchain anyway, right? And it was becoming more popular to start to actually explore development and really look past kind of cryptocurrency use cases and to actually like, how can we use blockchain technology to build out other apps and just for other cool use cases. I think that is what kind of made me stick and really want to explore blockchain a lot more. I got hired in this role about a year ago. And I am a senior PM, but I do have flexibility to kind of focus on like what are topics that I think are interesting. It's emerging technology, so really I focus on technologies that I think have a chance to make an impact to our society in some way. And that was just, you know, one of the first areas that I was like, yeah, absolutely, I want to do stuff on blockchain. I want to kind of create a lot of learning resources around this. And found that there was an opportunity to do so. Of course, we build our own solutions around blockchain. I'm not a part of the blockchain team, just to clarify that again, but it's been really nice here just to build lots of connections, to find opportunities to work with the blockchain team here at Microsoft and beyond. I hope that helps. Thanks for the questions, folks. All right, and I'm happy to go through some of my other questions. Let me go back over to the slides and let's see where we were there. But yeah, feel free to keep them coming. If there's like any follow-up that would be helpful, let me know. So I think a couple other things that I'll mention while I am here in terms of what is Microsoft currently working on with blockchain. So like you could see just from the sites that I was just looking at, there are really kind of just those three core products, which really there's the Azure Blockchain Service, Azure Blockchain Workbench, and the Azure Blockchain Development Kit. So those, the Blockchain Service and Blockchain Workbench have been in public preview for a while now, so since 2019 and 2018. So definitely just the team is kind of busy working on those products and thinking about how we can move towards kind of general availability. There are also some interesting partnerships that I should call out. I won't really talk much more about like what else we're doing with Azure Blockchain Workbench and Service since we just talked about those. But I will talk about a couple partnerships. I think that this is cool to look at as well. So we work with lots of different companies, and I think this list of partners is always growing. Let's see, a couple that I'll call out, thinking more about kind of the supply chain examples. Starbucks is a really good example where they use Azure to be able to kind of track the coffee beans, so they can track all the way from farm to store about, are the coffee beans actually being delivered? And this is another way to actually verify where the beans come from. So I think that's a kind of another classic supply chain example, and that's what we're seeing really a lot of. And I think especially in kind of the farming industries, this has really been kind of one of the top growing industries. I'll talk about maybe one or two more. These are great stories to come and read if you're interested, and that can even help you learn more about blockchain technology itself and think about some of the possible use cases. I think Xbox is another one. So Microsoft uses blockchain solutions to actually compute royalty statements for game developers. So the really cool thing here is that by using blockchain, and this is one of the advantages of using blockchain, typically in situations where something might be very time consuming. So you'll see here that typically these statements used to take a really long time to actually to complete and verify and send out. We can do this now in hours instead of months. So it's really a lot better to kind of track how much these game developers should be paid in a nice way, and then kind of do that seamlessly. So to track and then to actually send these payments out. So that's another cool example that you can think of. There are some finance examples in here, a couple of airlines that we partner with. So yeah, just some other cool examples, but these are kind of constantly being updated, and we're always thinking about new partnerships that we can develop and harness. Let me go back to the slides. And I'm going to skip around, and I'm probably going to skip to this slide. I did see a question that came in. Thank you, Jordan. Do you see enterprise adoption of blockchain gaining momentum in 2020? Do you see any major obstacles in the way of mainstream and enterprise blockchain adoption? I think that's a great question. Let's see, I mean, we're nearing the end of 2020. Of course, 2020 has been an interesting year. I still think that there has been plenty of enterprise adoption, but maybe this year, honestly, just like from trends that I've been reading up on, it's not necessarily as much of a boom as, folks had thought kind of coming into the year and maybe looking towards the end of last year into how this year would be. I think especially, for example, over the past years, we've seen a lot of growth in financial services and the use of blockchain technology. I would say that kind of adoption has definitely slowed down, probably for a number of reasons this year. I think we have, however, kind of seen blockchain adoption really grow in other industries like sciences and farming and supply chain. So those are a few ones that I already mentioned. So I think those are still businesses that are very much they're very much high in demand, and finance is always high in demand too. It's just I think the adoption trends have just, every year, essentially they're going to vary, but it's just been maybe a little bit less in financial services this year and more on some of those other industries. And I don't know if there's any particular reason, but yeah, I think it's interesting to think about, and especially just what's happening in the world, how that might affect how much folks are willing to kind of maybe even take risk, right? You can see kind of adopting blockchain as a big risk or a big change to their company, and maybe that's not the most realistic time to be introducing lots of big changes to the way that you do business, and just with the state of the world. Something else that is really important, and I think that this can be seen as an obstacle, is to governance. So governance, basically thinking about how you can bring many stakeholders, possibly from different companies together to do business together. So I think that's always one of the big obstacles of blockchain. So, a couple things there is blockchain education and kind of making sure that stakeholders understand the big picture, the benefits, possibly some of the disadvantages of actually introducing blockchain into the business, and finding a way to try to get these stakeholders to come to an agreement about how their blockchain network is going to come together, how they're going to be able to do business in this really, secure and efficient way. But I think governance is kind of continuing to be one of the things that sticks out as a kind of challenge to just getting people on board to want to change to do blockchain, or to bring blockchain into how they do their business. Let's see. And I think just I do see your follow-up question. Do I think adoption will be a slow trickle or open floodgates when it happens? I think from what we've seen, maybe it's more of the former. Maybe it's even more of a slow trickle. Again, I think kind of coming into this year, a lot of experts and kind of folks who study this thought there was going to be a really big boom or kind of a opening of the floodgates into blockchain adoption. I don't think it's quite been that way. I think we've seen a steady uptick of adoption across many industries just over the past few years, just because of the emergence and really the constant growth and maturity of different platforms available. So with Ethereum, with Corda, with Hyperledger, all of these platforms really are really maturing and offering a lot of different tools and frameworks and solutions for folks to build on top of. And I think that's made it a lot easier for folks to start to at least make it easier and reduce some of the obstacles for them to actually kind of build solutions. But yeah, of course, I think there's still kind of the education part along with that too. And then something else that I'll talk about when I'm here, might as well, I don't see this as a question actually, but just something to call out. And I was just kind of talking about the maturity of some of these different platforms. So I think something that's exciting is Ethereum, for example, and I already kind of mentioned this is like my favorite platform, is moving towards 2.0. And so that involves a number of changes. I think this has been talked about for quite a while. So Ethereum came around in 2015, and we're getting ready to kind of enter into the stage of Ethereum 2.0 in just a couple weeks. This is kind of scheduled to be live in December of 2020. And so Ethereum 2.0 is exciting. That could be something to look into, especially if anyone out there is interested in Ethereum development. And let me go ahead. I always have a link for things somewhere. But Ethereum 2.0, this kind of describes a little bit more about the vision behind that. But I think, again, most of these platforms are always looking for ways that they can be more safe, more scalable, more sustainable. That's a big one. So with sustainability, something else that's going to be a lot different is this concept of staking. So these platforms like Bitcoin, like Ethereum, other blockchain networks have this way that they provide consensus and kind of how they can continue to grow and introduce new blocks on their network. So staking is going to be huge. And this is kind of really what folks have been waiting for Ethereum 2.0. So I mentioned this is in terms of sustainability because it's going to be much more kind of environmentally friendly than the alternative consensus mechanism that Bitcoin and Ethereum have been using with proof of work. There has been a huge emergence of mining as kind of like a whole business. And, I think the point is about kind of verifying and keeping the network safe. But it is also about being able to reap some rewards for that. So the proof of work consensus is going away and proof of stake is the big thing. To kind of keep it short about what proof of stake is, of course, you can read about this. What's really different is that you actually kind of put up a stake. So you kind of put in some Ethereum or Ether into the network. I think they're asking for 32 Ether, which is like a substantial amount of money at this point. We're talking about like many thousands of dollars. I think if the current price of Ether is about 9,000 for one, but you kind of put up a stake in the network to be able to have the power then to kind of verify the transactions and then verify the blocks that are being put into this network. So it's kind of cool to learn a little bit more about this and think about like what Ethereum 2 has in store. Staking, again, is a huge part of that, but there is just like more that they're doing to make the platform a lot more secure and scalable as well as sustainable. Let me get some water. All right. I don't see any more questions coming in as of now. I do want to go back to this resources slide. Let's see. I'm making sure that I don't see any other questions. Okay. Cool. So I do want to point out these resources again. There are a lot of resources out there. I've already shared some of my favorite. I think these are great kind of learning resources. If you're here really wanting to learn more about blockchain technology and development, these are some great places to go and to learn more. So feel free to note this down. I have shared some of the links, I think, for most, if not all of these somewhere. But I do want to call this out again. And I see another question that I think I missed before. What are your thoughts on how public blockchains have a desire to introduce decentralized governance? Do you think it can work? Do you think the appropriate incentive structures are there? That's a good question, Jordan. Let me think about it to actually confirm if I understand your question. So I'm going to read it again because that's how I can start to understand the question. So what are your thoughts on how public blockchains have a desire to introduce decentralized governance? I'm assuming that this might be kind of related to even what I was just talking about in terms of Ethereum 2.0 and kind of moving towards like this proof of stake where we're more like you get to have more. I mean, really, you do kind of have more authority in the network because you are actually putting up a stake. For example, you're putting up your own currency behind that to actually have a stake in the network, and that's kind of what it makes me think of. I'm not sure about the decentralized governance, but I think that even staking is a good example of how public blockchains are maybe starting to introduce more authority, and that's kind of the way that I'm answering this question. And when I think about that example, I think that is a good thing. From everything that I do understand, I think that it can help to make the network more secure overall by just possibly kind of reducing the amount of things that could go wrong, I guess is what I want to say. So even just by staking, it can possibly, you know, reduce kind of like eliminate the things like 51% attacks and things where people can kind of take advantage of the network by having just the majority control. Which I think is a good thing, but there are just other benefits in how giving folks that have put up kind of this stake a little bit more control into how they can manage the network a little bit better. I don't think I completely answered the question, but that is the way that I thought about that one, like staking again is a really good example there. And with that, there is still an appropriate incentive structure where like these folks are still getting a reward for validating the blocks, and they're still getting kind of that transaction fee as part of that. Thank you for all the questions, Jordan. Cool. I also do want to call out a couple upcoming blockchain live streams that are coming up. So there is one on December 2nd. I'm not going to give out the times because I'm not sure exactly where folks are calling in from. But of course, you can go ahead and register on your appropriate meetup pages. You'll find this. So on December 2nd, there's a decentralized app building coming up. So that should be a fun one where we haven't really done a lot at the reactor around actually building a DApp. And then on December 9th, there's going to be another session around exploring Ethereum network. So these are both going to be maybe more traditional sessions that I do that are a little bit more hands-on and kind of following a specific example and building something. And then I'm starting to close things out. I'm happy to still take questions and I'll look at those, but I do want to remind folks to take the survey for this event. I'd also just like to hear, and I think this would be my question for you all, like if there are any other things that you're interested in learning about and knowing about and having future blockchain sessions about. All right, I do see the most recent question someone asked, have I personally heard of Bardios.org? Maybe that's how you say it. Let me see, I have not personally, and I'm curious. Can check it out. Oh. And for the person who asked this, I'm curious, is this a initiative that is important to you, or like what have you heard of Bardios or think it's interesting? You can let me know in chat. Interesting. So community-based initiative to use the best of cryptocurrency technology on a widespread commercial basis. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I have not heard of this. I think it's pretty cool. Looks like short confirmation time, lots of transactions per second, less of a transaction fee than many platforms. This is cool. Thank you for sharing. Looks like something I should explore. I do see another question now. In case of public or private setup for a blockchain network, how much effort is it to scale? I think that's a good question. I'm not sure. When I think of effort, or when I think of scaling, rather, maybe not effort, I'm thinking of like the cost of scaling and kind of making sure you have the appropriate infrastructure to support that. And that is more what I'm thinking about like kind of the cost to scale. I don't know if it's much of an effort, but I think that's something to consider as you're building out your network. And that's probably why you want to do things like first, deploy to a testing network so you can kind of start to explore just like how much even like your network can kind of sustain. So like if there is a lot of activity, what's going to happen? And I think those are the kind of similar things that you would do for like any, network or solution or app that you're building. You want to know how much it can appropriately scale and how quickly it can do that. So I think those are the kind of things that you would want to start to explore like as you're testing out your solution. And then I see another question from Jordan. Thank you. And this one is specifically about how do you see Microsoft's investment and engagement with blockchain growing in the future? I think that's a great question. I think we are definitely continuing to invest strongly in the few solutions that I mentioned, like really kind of doing what we can to grow and mature those solutions as we approach general availability for those. So I definitely, can say confidently that we are continuing to invest in those solutions and kind of continuing to partner with folks like I had mentioned. And, even this goes back to the very first question that someone had asked about, like, we do work really with Quorum and kind of these like Ethereum-based solutions, but how much are we going to start to explore working with other solutions as well? I think the examples were like Corda and Hyperledger. That I don't think I can speak super confidently towards, like how much we might start to expand past what we're currently working on, as like not being part of the team and not really knowing kind of what the plans are and what the roadmap is and how much we can actually talk about that. It's a little bit hard to say. So sorry, that's a little bit of a vague answer probably, but yeah, I think we're definitely continuing to invest very strongly in those solutions that we do have, but can't say for sure about anything past that. All right. I'm going to advance to my final slide now, and I just do want to make sure that everyone has my contact information. I'm happy to chat in any of those mediums that are listed there. Of course, this kind of meeting, you can only kind of ask me one-way questions, but I'd love to hear more from y'all about kind of any other questions that you have, any other solutions that you're thinking of, or want to talk more about what problems blockchain technology can help solve. Please feel free to reach out. All right, and I'm just giving it one more minute to see if anything else comes in, but if not, thank you all for joining me in this Ask Me Anything. I hope that it's been valuable. It's definitely kind of a new and interesting thing for me, but I do appreciate you all for taking the time, and I hope that everyone does take care out there.